guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Today I felt like creating something really sketchy and quick and somewhat autumn themed. So I'm going to show you how I created this really simple floral arrangement using watercolor and ink. So here are the paint colors that I'm going to be using. I have Davies Gray, Van Dyke Brown, Yellow Ochre, Indian Red, Sap Green, and Indigo. All of the supplies that I use, as always, are listed in the description below. With my number 8 Wonder Forest watercolor brush, by the way, these are now back in stock. The link is below if you want to purchase your own. I'm just taking the yellow ochre and very roughly creating the very center of my flower. Using the very tip of my brush and a little mix of indigo and Indian red, I created this really purpley mauve color. And I'm just really quickly sketching on, almost, I guess you could say, sketching on these petals. I'm being really quick and loose with it. I'm just going to create the first layer of petals like so, and then I'm going to dab in a little bit more Indian red just to add a little bit more color to these wet petals. And then I'm going to do the outer layer, and this layer I wanted to be a little bit more red, so I just added a tiny bit more red to that mixture, and I'm just going around and doing the exact same thing. I'm keeping my lines very sketchy and using the very tip of my brush just to pull that color out. That's the best thing about this project, is you don't have to be neat about it at all. Just use the tip of your brush, be loose and flowy, and just kind of do whatever you want. I'm going to take a little bit more of that yellow again and create the center of a second flower. This flower is going to be more of like a side view of a flower, so I'm going to make the petals on the top part here a little bit shorter, and the ones along the bottom are going to be fuller and sort of coming out and around the bottom of the inside area of the flower. And I'm just mixing up colors as I go, so I mixed up a little Indian red with the yellow ochre to create this sort of peachy pink color. And I've just dabbed on a little bit more of the Indian red to add a little bit more color in certain areas. Now I'm going to mix up a little bit of Davies Gray with Sap Green just to kind of mute that green down a little bit. And I'm going to create some leafy details over here. So I've just created a stem, and again, keeping this very loose and light with my hand. I'm using the tip of my brush and I'm just creating the leafy bits coming out of this other flower. And then I can go back in and darken that with a little bit of a darker mixture. Now that we've got our two main flowers here, we're just going to work on building out the composition a little bit. So we're going to make it a little bit fuller. I'm adding in a closed flower right here. So just like the bud of a flower, using those really sketchy lines once again. And I'm just going to be adding in a couple more bits of foliage and little leaf details and such. And I know things look a little bit messy right now, but that's kind of the point, and we're going to pull it all together with the ink at the end. The ink is really going to be what's going to make this look a little bit more illustrated and unique. So I'm really just using different mixtures of the colors in my palette to create more muted shades of those colors, because I did want to keep this a more fall-like palette. And also keeping fall in mind, I'm doing a couple little like weedy little sprigs of greenery and grasses and such. I'm also gonna add in a couple of little red berries. I like adding berries to my floral arrangements. I don't know why, I just think it adds a little something cute and unique, so that's just my preference. And I wanted to create sort of a little feather detail over here. I'm not sure how well it worked out in the end. I think it would be better if this piece maybe had a few more little feathers to kind of give that effect, but I just wanted to throw it in to see what happened. So I'm just deciding where I want to put more foliage. I just wanted to fill out the paper a little bit more, so I'm adding a few more of these, and then we're going to be done with the painting in a minute. I'm just going to add a couple more berries over here to kind of balance out those other ones. And this is pretty much what it's going to look like when it's painted. You want to make sure this is totally dry before we go in with the ink. So I'm just gonna finish off those little berries by adding a couple of stems, using a brown shade and kind of pulling that red into it. So now let's let that dry completely, and I'm gonna be using a Tombow mono drawing pen to create all of the illustrated sketchy ink details. So I'm just using the pen, and I like to keep my lines a little bit broken at times, so I have really, really light pressure on my pen, and every now and then I will lift it up a little bit as I'm drawing a line, just to kind of give that little break in the line. I just find it looks a little bit more illustrated, and it's definitely more like my style. And you can use the pen to add in all of the little vein details on the leaves now and all of that kind of thing. So I'm just outlining some of the different pieces of foliage that I've painted in before. And again, you can see that I'm keeping my lines nice and sketchy. And I wanted to add little dots and little circles to the centers of these flowers, just to give it that really pollinated look. So I'm just gonna completely try to cover in that yellow area with all of these little random sort of bumpy circle wavy lines. And then I'll just use the pen to lightly outline some of those petals, just to give them a little bit of definition so that you know they're actually petals. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on this other flower here with the little circles in the center. And I don't like to fully outline the petals and the different objects and stuff when I do ink and wash, because I do like to keep those sort of sketchy details from the paint itself as well. I tend to find that if you outline it a little bit too much, it tends to look a little bit too like cartoony. That's just my preference. And you'll also notice that I don't worry too much about staying inside of the lines. I like to sometimes make my lines a little bit offset from the actual painting itself. These kind of paintings are also a really great way to learn how to do line work and sort of improve on your line work a little bit. I also really like doing ink and wash techniques if I'm working on a painting and it's not really turning out how I envisioned it. I feel like sometimes adding some ink to it or some outline or more of a sketchy style, basically changing up the style of the painting, it can sometimes save your painting. So maybe you have an old painting that you're not too proud of. Try taking that painting and adding some line detail to it and seeing what else you can come up with. So I'm just gonna add a couple little final details here. And that's pretty much gonna do it for this piece. It was really easy, really fun. Literally anybody, beginner, intermediate, whoever you are, can do this. I hope you guys liked the tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. I really hope to see you guys in the next video.